Hey guys, welcome into the KC Sports Authority podcast. As usual, JB, Spencer, and myself, Keegan Russell, here with you tonight. Before we get into tonight's episode, just as a reminder, where you can find our podcast, we are over on Spotify and over on YouTube. So make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss a future episode, and especially subscribe now because there's some big things coming on the podcast here in the next month or so. Don't want to announce all of it right now, but there's a big time project we've been working on for a while that is going to set us up for some fun future content. So jump on with us now at KCSA Pod. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course on YouTube and Spotify. All right, guys. So news broke earlier today, and there was a rumor of this yesterday that the former KU big man who entered the transfer portal, Zach Clemence, who announced that he was transferring to UC Santa Barbara. Supposedly there was some talk that he could come back, and it is official as of right now. We're recording this at 6 o'clock on Tuesday evening, and it was announced a couple hours ago by Bill Self at a press conference that Zach Clemence is indeed coming back for the continuation of his career at Kansas. Very shocked by that news, honestly. It's not something we were predicting. We thought if any of the bigs that entered the portal would come back, it'd be, I mean, not it's too late now, but it'd be someone like Zuby or Ernest. But Zach Clemence is coming back. So before I break down the details of that and what it all means, just first gut reaction from you guys on hearing that today, and if it changes anything for you.
I don't know how much it
Yeah,
changes, but it's definitely something that's cool to get him back and get a returning player that has, national championship experience and I mean another stretch for. So I'm not sure, if it makes a huge impact right away, but I think it's definitely something that we should be fortunate happen that we got him back.
yeah, it's pretty big. It's pretty big to think. In the sense that we were really going to be between a rock and a hard place if any, God forbid, anybody got injured, any one of our bigs. My goodness, I mean, we would have had just about no options other than maybe going into our bench, specifically into our walk-ons to just add some size onto the team if anyone was in foul trouble. I think it would have really made the team look a lot different if any of our bigs had gotten injured. Obviously, we hope nothing happens this season, but that would be where Zach's impact comes into play because the plan right now is that he's going to redshirt. That is his intention, and that is what we are going to see. However, plans can change. We don't know if between now and the start of the season, maybe he's just having a breakout summer, and maybe he's performing so well that we start taking a second look at him and thinking, okay, obviously he would start over Hunter, but maybe he absolutely has that next guy off the bench, that 6-man role that can really light a fire for us if we're doing poorly on offense with our starters. And, we think there's potential here. Now, I think ultimately, was I excited? I was a little confused by it. I was kind of, I was hit or miss. Mainly because I knew of the intention to redshirt. So if he redshirts and if there's no injuries, it literally doesn't have a bearing on next season at all. So that's the downside. The upside is it protects us if something were to happen, which was a big fear. There were a couple fears going into next season. One of them was our bigs. The other one is our shooting. And I think that solves a really big problem. Shooting can also be resolved just if you have everybody shooting threes in the gym all summer, but that'll be seen, I guess, toward the beginning of the season. We'll see the progress there, but I'm excited. I'm happy to have him back. It's another face in the locker room that is at least familiar. Dewan and KJ first were alone, and now they got Kevin back and now Zach back. So it's starting to feel like we're coming back together.
So it was definitely a surprise. When I first saw that as potential, I was like, why would he want to come back? Like, you were bad these last 2 years, and you're not going to get a lot of playing time again this year. So I was a little surprised by it. now that it's kind of settled in for a few hours, I do think it's a good move, and I'll get into why here in a second. But let's go through the details. So according to, this was during Bill Self's press conference earlier today, which of course, if you haven't seen it, I'm sure you can find it just about anywhere. Go back and listen to it because he had some important things to say about that. But essentially what happened was, Zach back a month and a half ago, not too long after he put his name in the portal, a couple weeks after he had put in, and it was announced by a couple guys, Joe Tipton being one of them, that he was announcing that he was going to commit to UC Santa Barbara, and take his talents that way. According to Self in the press conference today, while that was the intention, he never set foot on campus. He never enrolled in classes. So he, by all intents and purposes, is not a UC Santa Barbara. He ended up going back home to Texas after leaving Kansas. So according to that, and according to an NCAA perspective, he's still a Kansas student anyway, even though he was in the portal. So even though they committed, and I don't know how the rules of all that work, even though they committed, until they enroll in classes and step foot on campus, they still maintain their eligibility. So he will be eligible to play this year. But it sounds like last week he called up Bill Self to have a conversation, and don't know exactly how that conversation went, but I'm sure it had something along the lines of, hey, I didn't get the best first 2 years. I put my name in the portal, rightfully so. But as I'm thinking about it, maybe he's thinking long-term development and still feels that even though the first 2 years were rough, that, now with Ernest leaving and Zuby leaving, there's really no other future big man on the roster right now. Even if Hunter stays 2 years, there's nobody currently signed that's a traditional 5-man that could come in and play that role. So he talks with Self, and they talk about what's best, and both of them deciding it would be best for him to come back. Now, according to Zach, his intention is to come back in redshirt this year. Bill made it sound like there's potential for him to play. More than likely, it is going to be a redshirt season, and then if anything happens, he could burn it. But it sounds like to me, Zach wants a developmental year where he goes, all right, the situation is a little different now. There's not as many big men there. We still needed another big guy for depth purposes anyway. He can come in, play with one of the best big men in the country, learn and play behind him. Maybe he's thinking, the play style they're going to have with Hunter Dickinson, he could learn from that because they have a similar skill set. He's not as big bodied and dominant in the paint, but maybe he can use this as a learning year to play that play style and be a focal point next year if Hunter were to leave. So I do think on paper it's a good return. Bill spoke highly of him, said that he's excited to have him back, and I think JB, you touched on it there. The fact that he's familiar with the program and how things work here, even though he hasn't had much success, I think that definitely plays to his advantage coming into the year. Really, I think what it does for him is it sets up him and Parker Brown for competition for the summer. My guess is, especially if Zach were to redshirt, that Parker Brown still is going to have the things are going to be heavily in his favor. But that competition is good. Maybe if Parker struggles to get in and doesn't really feel like his fit's that great, and Zach, for some reason, shows a lot of development, that's not a bad problem to have. But I did want to look at Clemence's stats because as much as it's exciting that he's back, there's a reason he went into the portal to begin with, and that was some of that, lack of opportunity in playing time, but some of that was he just was not very good. So I look back at his freshman year. He played in 24 games. Small sample size because he's only averaged about 5 minutes a game throughout his 2 years. So 2 points a game his freshman year, 1.8 rebounds, shot 48% from the free throw line, which isn't good, 27% from three, which is terrible, and 37% from the field. Now, albeit very small sample size, but on paper looks terrible. Now, he had a couple injuries freshman year, and there were a lot of guys on the rotation at the 5 spot, and obviously being behind David McCormick in the national championship run, he wasn't going to get a lot of time behind him or Mitch Lightfoot. So sophomore year was the year we all anticipated him to have a breakout season because he'd been here a year. You had a couple new guys coming in that you would think he'd have the advantage over, and there was a lot of competition. Well, unfortunately for Zach, that competition did nothing for him to get pumped up and really win the job. So he struggles again in his sophomore year, still manages to get into 20 games, averaging about 5 minutes a game. But same thing, 32% from the floor, 22% from three. I think there was a stretch to start the year. He went like 0 for 7 or 0 for 9 to start the year from three and like 1 of 15 or something. So not efficient, not a great defender. So statistically, when we were talking, a month and a half ago about him leaving, it was all right. I understand why he did not perform well. Now that he's back, I think the mindset changes a little bit from our perspective of, even though he struggled, now he has an opportunity to reflect, dive in, develop, and learn. And especially if he redshirts, where there's no pressure on him this year to perform, he can sit back, practice, develop, build his frame up a little bit more, work on his footwork and skills, and be primed for a solid redshirt junior season the following year. So I think it's going to be a great fit. I don't anticipate he's actually going to play this season unless for some reason over the summer he's just outperforming Parker Brown. If he's really outperforming Parker Brown all summer, then I do think that solidifies him not redshirting. But he is prime redshirt candidate.
You never know. He could do that. You never know what Bill is going to convince him of. If he was outperforming him, think about how he would be the first big off the bench. I mean, he could get solid minutes. My fear for him is when he finally steps foot back on that floor, we need to make sure that he is on point with his fundamentals. I think he needs to just relax and not be so quick to maybe shoot the three. I know that's part of his skill set. He had a small sample size. It's hard to get hot from three when you have a small amount of minutes to be on the floor. So it's tough to get in rhythm when you're not out on the floor constantly. But if he just calms down, and what do we always say? Bill Self wants someone to just get rebounds and defend. If he gets rebounds and defends, if he is active and aggressive and blocking shots, if he's just doing what he should do at the fundamentals of his position, I think he would be in a much better position to gain more minutes. So whether that's this season or the season after, of course, I would hope that if it's the season after, that he does more than just rebound and defend. But that's the building block that he needs to start on. He needs to calm it down and maybe not shoot an open three, move the ball a little bit more. And I think we can see some pretty big things from Zach. By the time that he steps on the floor again, regardless, I think he's going to be, he'll be an upperclassman in all senses of the word, really. He's going to be a leader on the team. And, he's got to act like it on the floor. And that's not a knock on him. I think he's absolutely capable of doing that. It's just, I would hope that we see big things whenever he comes back.
Spencer, with him being back in the mix now, what are the two or three things that you either have for expectations for him, or the two areas of his game you would like to see him develop the most to actually have a solid impact on this program, whether that's this year or next season?
Yeah, I think, and JB, you had a couple good points there. I think the biggest things that I think he needs to grow in is shot selection is the first one. Mechanically, his shot looks good. He's obviously a capable shooter, so it's not as much as fixing your shot. It's fixing when you're going to take shots. And a lot of times, if you take shots out of place in the flow of the offense, it affects you kind of as a shooter. And so I think that's the first thing, just picking and choosing the spots, because Bill's not putting him out there and expecting him to, knock down 4 or 5 threes a game. Now, him being out there as a capable shooter is going to affect spacing in a positive way. So I think him at least, obviously improving his percentage maybe to mid-30s would be enough to at least have defenses not be able to sag off him. And if he wants to be outside the paint. So that's number one. Number two is definitely just defensively help defense rotations, not missing, your switches or anything like that. There was him and MJ Rice were the two that, if you watch defensive possessions last year, a lot of times there was looking around like whose guy was that, or there was a missed switch, there was a miscommunication, on the rotation, and so I think just cleaning that up to where you don't have as much of that is going to plug up any potential holes in the defense, at least on the interior. So if he just picks his spots well, takes 2 to 3 well-placed threes per game, gets boards, solid on defense, I really think that's all Bill would expect out of him. And if he does that, at that point, he's a contributor on a championship caliber team instead of going to a random school in California and not sniffing the tournament for 4 years. So those would be the two things that I would expect him hopefully for him to improve upon the most. Because I mean, he's a prototype for a Bill Self, improvement plan. I mean, he's got skill, he's got touch, he's got size. I think he's the kind of guy that Bill can develop into a really solid player down the road. And he might be thinking 4 years down the road. He might be thinking himself as a senior, where am I going to be better off in the long run? So if that's the way he's thinking, I definitely think it was a good move for him to come back.
Yeah, and I think really to sum it up, this is probably more of a 2 years down the road move. If he does get to play this year and has an impact, that's great. But I think in reality, this is, again, development year for him. Let him really kind of find his identity as a player in the system. Do the things Bill Self's asking. Sit back, learn from a guy like Hunter, reflect on what you're capable of doing, and just put in the work this season to be primed for next year. So don't think it changes the outlook at all for this year. I think it's way too early to even talk about the outlook for the following season because who knows what's going to happen. But I think that's a good place to wrap up there. Before we get out of here, though, I know, again, keeping this episode short intentionally, because we're going to do a couple episodes here this week. But how about we just reflect real quick on the fact that Christian Braun has now won the NBA championship with the Nuggets and has gone back-to-back seasons, as well as winning, in high school and becoming probably one of the all-time winningest basketball players in the state of Kansas. How cool is that to see? I mean, again, JB, you hit it on the head. You said Nuggets in 5, and that was right. It was really never a competition. As much as I hope the Heat would come out and play well, they just didn't consistently, and their role players struggled. But yeah, Christian Braun, the local Kansas kid, the former Jayhawk, goes back to back. What do you guys think of that?
Man, I was so proud of Christian, man. Look, he
actually played well,
played a
too.
role. Yeah, he played great, and his game 3 was an absolute stud of a performance, and of course, game 5, he had 7 points. It was a respectable performance, and he was asked to do a lot defensively. I didn't see very many defensive mistakes. I think he stayed on his man a lot. He made Jimmy Butler pass the ball a lot, and when Jimmy didn't pass it, I saw Christian doing right by his assignment and guarding him right in the face, and it was a tremendous job by Christian. So he played a smaller role. He's a rookie, but man, he was the last rookie standing at the end of the day, and we're really proud of him as fans because the guy's a winner, and he did it for us. He did it for the state of Kansas, and he's doing it now in the NBA. He partied a little hard.
Yeah, he did. Do you guys see him cut his hand?
Yeah, I was like, I really hope that wasn't his shooting hand, or I had only seen it for a split second. I was scared. I'm like, oh man, what is this?
Gone.
Yeah. But you know what? I mean, he kind of deserved it. I don't think he broke any rules. So, I saw one comment on Twitter. There was someone saying, "Is he even 21?" He is. He's 22 years old. He's on the back of the bus in the parade, just chugging champagne. And someone was like, "Is he even 21?" Yes, he is. 22 years old and having the time of his life. So, and I think I will say I think this actually makes him, albeit this success is in the NBA, but you got to think because it was so recent, does this propel him into like top 5 favorite players of all time for a lot of KU fans, just because they think of him as like a winner? I mean, heck, winning the NCAA title with Kansas is going to instantly put him in the top 5 favorites of all time. And so
I think
many
he's definitely
students' minds.
top 5 most likable.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say top 5 best kind of thing, but top 5 most likable, most relatable. I mean, you're talking about him, Frank, Devontae, for sure. Those 3 are up there.
Oh, yeah. And it's funny he's able to. It's funny he's able to do that with having the reputation of, being very energetic, let's say, on court and calling people by the B word after he makes a big shot. I think it's, he can be looked at negatively by some people, but for some reason, it's just we look at that stuff with fondness as KU fans. We just love it from him.
I mean, he played like everyone always say is first rookie to do this, first rookie to do that. He played like a seasoned veteran, which is incredibly, impressive because, I mean, you only have one season of NBA experience to get used to the speed of the game, the athleticism, the skill, and just step in the biggest, role that you possibly can, which is, playing a sizable amount of minutes in the NBA finals, and to do so well, it was just crazy. I mean, he was doing all the things that Bill Self loves when they're at KU, and it just goes to show. I mean, he's now got a carved out role on a perennial contender that will probably stay a contender for years to come. So he's probably going to be a long time Nugget, and he's probably going to be a long time valuable Nugget. So I think it's super cool for him, and it's super cool for KU. KU fans to see success in the NBA from a KU player. I mean, Chalmers obviously won a couple titles with Bronny. So I think it's just really cool to see a guy have a very pertinent role in an NBA Finals team. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, especially in his first year. It feels like I mean, it took Wiggins 10 years into his career almost before he got a chance to play in the finals. And as talented as he is, you were hoping you'd see some more of that. But yeah, super exciting for Christian Braun. CB is a true winner. High school level, college level, now NBA level. He's in a perfect situation. He's carved out a nice role, sixth man off the bench, or first man off the bench, but six-man role. I think he's got the potential to put himself into the starting lineup next year if they were to either move on from Caldwell Pope to clear up some cap space, or Michael Porter Jr. to flip into something else. I think there's some potential there for him to carve out even more time. But yeah, super exciting for him. Definitely, we want to make sure we squeeze in a little bit of that talk, even though that's a week ago now. But want to make sure we got some of that in because one, JB was right about the Nuggets in 5, and wanted to make sure he got his credit where credit is due. And just the fact that we can
don't remember JB saying that for some reason. I don't know. Maybe we'll have to go back and watch the.
It's there.
Maybe it's been deleted.
It's there.
Because you and I both said Nuggets in 6. We thought Miami would steal one on the road and win at least one at home, and of course they
you guys were both saying 6, and I was remaining silent, but on camera you can see me going, no, 5.
Yeah, you said it.
I don't remember saying 6. I don't know. Maybe something else. Maybe it'll hit me later. I don't know.
Anyway, we're gonna wrap up this one there. Again, short episode because we're gonna try and get multiple out this week. The next episode that'll be dropping here shortly after this one actually posts. We're gonna get into some NBA draft talk, kind of do the draft profiles for both former Kansas players, Grady Dick and Jalen Wilson. Talk about where they could end up, what their strengths and weaknesses are, maybe some player comparisons and where we'd like to see them. And if we have time in that episode, maybe a couple, big NBA potential trades. So stay tuned for that one. That is going to be the very next episode, which won't be out too long after you guys are getting a chance to watch it. So again, where can you find the podcast? You can watch us over on YouTube, see us live, look at our very, very pretty faces, our lovely faces and hair. Find us over on YouTube at KCSA Pod. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Leave your comments below what you think about Zach Clemence being back on the team, how that changes things for you. Maybe your favorite moment from the CB tournament run in the NBA Finals run. You can also listen to us over on Spotify. Same thing. You can rate the podcast on Spotify. Give us a 5-star rating if you like what you listen to. We would appreciate that. And of course, make sure you share it with your friends. And of course, you can always find us on all of our social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram at KCSA Pod. And again, if you haven't subscribed already, please do so because we have a lot of big things coming this summer. The first thing's coming up here in a couple of weeks. Hopefully the first week of July, some big news dropping, which we'll have more details on here soon. But it's definitely going to impact the podcast for the better. Be a lot of great opportunities ahead for us. So please, if you haven't done so yet, take the time to subscribe, share it with your friends. And as always, guys, thank you for listening. Can't wait to have you guys in the next episode.